News comes out, Trump's being banned permanently by Twitter. Then it's Facebook. They don't say permanently, but they're kind of taking him down for now. What was your reaction when you heard about the fact that the 45th president of the United States was being banned permanently in a very powerful virtual government called Twitter?
I'd rather hear what Trump is thinking than not. I'd rather know than not. I'd rather see what's happening out in the public than not. I don't know what's going on underground now. And no one knows what the impact of this has been on all the people who supported Trump. What are they supposed to conclude precisely from this? I'd rather these things were out in the open. I thought that companies who are doing such things have no idea what responsibility they're taking on. Because now they've announced their willingness, or maybe even their responsibility, depending on how you look at it, to police the content of what's being exchanged on their networks. Well, that's a rabbit hole that you, in all likelihood, don't want to go down. So you see attempts to censor emerging quite constantly now, and it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's very upsetting that this happened to the president, to an elected president. God, wouldn't you like to know what Trump thinks? I'd love to know what he thinks. We need to know, because half the population voted for him.
Why do you think opposition doesn't want you to know what he's thinking? What do you think they're scared of?
I think they're scared of all sorts of things. I think they're scared of the possibility that he has the power of a demagogue, that he's a populist, that he could harness the crowd for nefarious ends. They're concerned about his respect for democratic norms and his respect for the authorities of the state. And so that's their fear. Trump was a populist. And so that's where that fear comes from. There's also fear, of course, because some people think one way politically, and a lot of this is temperamentally based, and other people think another way, and it's hard for them to communicate across the divide.
Only on Johnny Bigger.
So that's some of the fear. But, you know, it has to be addressed, because in the US, there's this problem that 50% of this situation, 50% of the people voted for Trump. That can't just be swept under the rug. You can't sweep something like that under the rug, like at all. And so what's going to be the consequence of stopping him from speaking? Why would you think that all the consequences of that are going to be good? I don't think they're going to be good. I mean, certainly a large part of the American population felt like they were punched by the large media companies, the large social media companies, because they were affiliated with Trump, and all of a sudden he was silenced. So all those people feel that they've been silenced. Well, they have been. Well, you might say, well, those are precisely the people who should be silenced. Is that what you think? You think 25% of your population should be silenced? Do you? What does that say about you? And what are you going to do with those 25%? You have to live with them. Christ, you're probably related to a bunch of them. So it's not a good solution, I don't think.
What has been the consequences of silencing someone that has a big following? Who ends up paying a price long term?
The classic defense for free speech is that, if you limit someone's free speech, not only do you limit the rights of the person who's speaking, but you limit the rights of those who could have heard. And it seems to me that I believe that people have the intelligence to make up their own minds, and that they should have the information presented to them. My experience has been that people are far more intelligent and perspicacious than we generally assume. They come to the right conclusions, who's to say, but I don't think there's anything more important than freedom of speech. I don't think that these companies had the right to do what they did. They had the right legally. They had the right, obviously, because they did it and they got away with it. There's a technological problem at the bottom of it too. We have all these new communication technologies and we don't really know what the rules are. None of us do, including the people who run these social networks. It's not like they understand what they've created. How could you? No one can understand them, what you've created. You want to be able to say what you think. When enough sensors operate in your head, then you can no longer think. And if you can no longer think, well, then you can't see and you're blind and you stumble into holes.
Only on Johnny Bigger.
And everyone stumbles into holes, and that's not good. If you're discussing something that matters, the probability that you're going to offend someone rises to virtual certainty. If the discussion you're having about an important issue isn't of sufficient potency to offend someone, then you're not saying anything at all. Well, then how many people should you offend? Or can you offend before you're properly banned? You can say, well, a line was crossed because the president of the United States fomented armed insurrection. Had the situation been that clear, he would have been impeached. So there's ambiguity around the circumstances. Well, a line was obviously crossed. Well, what line exactly? And who's going to decide when it's crossed? Exactly. And this is very troublesome, but it's a problem we all have. In some sense, it's not a problem that Jack Dorsey has or Mark Zuckerberg. They're facing the same set of issues that the rest of it are facing. I mean, they have more authority over their platform, obviously, but it's not like there's a bunch of us out here who have the answer and they could just come asking. We're all facing this mystery, which is what our technological transformation of our means of communication, what it means and what we should do with it. It's complicated. You have unlimited bandwidth and you have the opportunity to do anything you want and share it with hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, what should you do? You have enough money. And so, because one simple answer to a problem is, well, I'll do what makes money. It's like, okay, well, now you have the money. Okay, now what should you do? Well, it's complicated. Yep. It's really complicated. And so we need to talk about what we should do. Many politicians are unbelievably leery of long format. They don't understand it. They don't understand YouTube. They don't understand podcasts. They're still stuck in 1970, technologically speaking. And, they're worried about misstepping. Well, that'll revolutionize politics if people actually start to engage in it. I think, at least it has the possibility of that happening. You tell people what's going on and let them figure it out. You can't hide it anyways. If it's real, you can't hide it. It comes out. You can't hide reality. It always comes out. And usually if you try to hide it, it comes out in a much worse form. That's my experience as a psychologist. I've never seen anyone successfully hide anything in their life. Not really. It leaks out in all sorts of ways.
Only on Johnny Bigger.
They don't necessarily even make the connection, but they can discover the connection later and be very sad about it.